according to him, and this is in his words, for at least 2 centuries, its members have suffered from an inherited prion disease called familial fatal insomnia that strikes them usually in their 50s, killing by depriving them of sleep. So it involves an autosomal dominant mutation. So if a parent has the illness, their children will have a 50% chance of also having that illness later in life, which is a bigger jump than, say, if it were sporadic. So according to Max, the chance of having this disease in the general population is 1 in 30 million. Pretty rare. Wow. But in this family, it's 1 in 2.
Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to the Poisoner's Almanac. I am your co-host, Adam.
I'm Rebecca.
How are you doing, my dear? I do. We just saw the Minecraft movie, or I just saw the Minecraft movie with you all the other night, which was really funny.
This is actually Camilla's, but I'm borrowing it because
yes,
he's kind of relevant to this particular episode.
You don't say.
Sort of.
So last night, my brother-in-law he's a massive movie buff, cinephile, if you will, and he bought me a ticket to see Mission Impossible, the latest one, The Final Reckoning, and it was, first of all, seeing Tom Cruise, who is a raging Scientologist, seeing him on screen is always funny because I'm like, he keeps making movies so he'll never have to be alone with his own thoughts.
Did they complete the mission?
They did.
Then it's not impossible, is it?
So I, without spoiling it too much, in a previous Mission Impossible, way back, this is like 37 movies ago, when Michelle Monaghan is playing his wife, she resurrects him from the dead, like with like some backwards form of what you would call commotio cordis, like the blunt force trauma right to the heart that causes the heart to stop.
Yeah.
Well, she's a registered nurse, and she's trying to do CPR, and she's exasperated and on her last at the end of a rope, and she just starts slamming her fist down on his chest, and he comes back. Yeah, that was a long time ago. Well, something similar. Of course, Tom Cruise does actually die again, and then he comes back. And that was part of the plan, kind of. Yeah. Typical.
So she pounded him in the chest, and his heart started back.
His heart started back, which is makes perfect sense. I've done it 3 times. So
does she have like epinephrine in that fist of hers?
I don't know. It's a great question. So saw that last night. It was yeah. It was the 9:45 showing, so I didn't get home till like 1:30 in the morning. So I'm dragging. But it's the type of movie that's all about spectacle. Like the plot was, pretty decent. It was pretty, it was pretty hooky. It had some modern day parallels that were very spooky, which,
I pretty decent for a plot.
Well, of course you do.
I can't do spectacle only. I'm not a Michael Bay fan. I just can't. I can't do it.
Of course. Well, look, the Fast and the Furious series is like the quintessential, spectacle focused type of movie. Transformers. I mean, it's not. Nobody goes like, bro, the writing in the Transformers movies. I mean, come on. Nobody says that. Nobody says
cool
that.
It's the cartoon. CGI. Cartoon's cool.
Sure. But yeah. So anyway, that's what I did last night. But yeah, that's going to take us to some listener viewer comments. These are from Spotify. Let's grab. Here we go. This is from Liz Bianchini. I think I said her name correctly, and she said I said her name correctly in a previous comment. So I'm kind of excited about that. Liz said, this topic was a pleasant surprise. One of the labs I was looking at when I was considering a PhD was focused on hantavirus and Nipah. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly or not. Nipah. I just passed the 1 year mark of moving out of a rat infested house I was renting. Property management was awful about the situation. And the city couldn't do much aside from require them to hire pest control and pay for the cleanup. They were mostly in the kitchen. I'm just now getting back into the habit of cooking regularly. So glad I'm out of there.
Yeah. I grew up in a house that had was old house, drafty, and insulation missing if there was any
I
anyway.
don't believe that house was insulated. No.
It was rough. It was my great it was in my family for like 100 years. So it's an old house.
Still in the family.
Yeah, it is.
Yep.
There were family that died in that house.
Yes.
It was not haunted. Either that or I just wasn't aware.
Yeah. Yeah.
Things don't spook me like that anyway. So, and like last time I was like, I don't even know if I believe in ghosts, but yeah, it's an old house and there were some critters that would sneak in. So I get that. It's not a fun time when you've got little nasties that are hard to get rid of. And then like nobody, especially if you're living somewhere that somebody else owns and they just won't do anything about it.
Yeah. You know, it's
That's a
tough,
health concern.
Man. Yeah. There's not a whole lot of, if a landlord wants to be, trash can, it's kind of tough to move the needle on those kind of situations. That's rough. And Liz actually, excuse me. Oh boy. I was up very late last night. Excuse me, y'all. Liz actually, I'm pretty sure she completed her PhD because she teaches microbiology.
Yeah.
She is like pretty sure she is a microbiologist.
Oh, she's gonna like our topic today, I think.
Yes.
I think a lot of people will.
And we've got one more comment from, let's see here. Yeah. This is from Thomas Paris on Spotify. My mother almost died of measles as a child. It's just so deadly and so contagious. People just don't understand these days. Could not agree more, my friend. Yeah.
Yeah. You had I remember there was somebody that you were talking about, this is a couple of years back, you were talking about the measles vaccine on Facebook or whatever. And honestly, Facebook's just one of those places where anything you say is going to get contested by somebody, right?
Yes.
And they were like, this person was like, well, nobody's ever died of measles. And I'm like, whoa, this is my time to shine. So I got up in those comments and I was like, actually. So yeah, and we've done a whole
quick Google. I mean, they're just a quick Google away from abject embarrassment. It's just,
yeah.
What are you saying? Nobody's ever died from the measles. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
And also, like it can cause so many other things too. It is the most contagious, one of the most contagious, illnesses we know of. So it's just,
man,
you've heard us talk about this for like what, 2 hours on that anyway. So
yes, we could do another two. But like, I think it was Liz that actually pointed out like the immunity amnesia that measles can cause.
We did that in the episode.
Yeah, like you can recover, but then the memory cells in your immune system have been infected by the measles, and it causes your immune system to attack the memory cells, I believe is how that works.
Yeah.
Which is insane.
You're left with this blank slate where you could just catch all kinds of fun stuff.
Brother. So anyways, get vaccinated. Why don't you?
I feel like a lot of people who refuse to vaccinate their kids have already been vaccinated. They have.
Listen, I just love to see the stats. I just want to see the stats from people who have chosen not to have their babies go through the typical vaccination regimen. I want to know how many of those people have been already vaccinated. And the fascinating thing is the MMR vaccine is so good at stopping that disease that it has left the public consciousness. Just like Thomas says in this comment, people just don't understand these days. That's because of the vaccine.
It
That's
is a very
because it
effective
is
vaccine.
it's a bloodborne virus. Oh, thumbs up. It's a bloodborne virus and it's a bloodborne vaccine. So the vector and the vaccine are the same, which is something we couldn't say about COVID.
Also, there are no dead baby parts in a vacuum.
Oh boy. Yes, that is misinformation, folks.
None.
Yes.
So,
What is this timeline? What's going on? Can we just go back to, I don't know, 2002?
you know what though? 2002 had its own problems, I'm sure.
It's true, but I didn't
It feels like
we
we are
didn't have
going
to.
backwards.
Yeah, of course. We're regressing.
Well,
We're regressing.
the guy that's leading our health and human services right now does not believe in germ theory.
If you'd have told me that,
So that's a problem.
Yeah, if you would have told me, like right as I graduated physical therapy school and passed my licensure exam, hey, congrats on doing all that, but listen, the secretary of HHS is not going to believe in germ theory.
So
What would I say?
And we are going to do an episode. Y'all know me. I don't like to talk about politics and stuff, but like, I feel like this is now, it's bleeding into at least like the RFK stuff and the things that they're trying to get rid of. It's bleeding into health. Obviously, health is the Secretary of Health and Human Services, but it's something that we've talked about, you know, how the FDA came about and why it's important to regulate chemicals and such. And
just go back and listen to the Radium Girls series. You guys will never, I mean, you'll be up to speed. Believe me.
So I feel like a lot of the stuff we've covered, it feels like a lot of stuff is coming apart at the seams.
Yes.
And I think we should definitely talk about it. I'm kind of, I'm waiting for that moment. I'm like, I feel like more is on the horizon and I don't want to do the episode. And then all of a sudden the next week, there's something I could have included in the episode.
Isn't that funny? Like you kind of want to take your time because there's going to be something else next week that is also unbelievable.
Yeah.
So,
and again this isn't
we just
us,
said that
like,
at the same time.
We did. Sorry. Like it's not. I like for this podcast to be a kind of a reprieve from the political stuff going around.
Yes.
Not that we don't have, you know, political beliefs and understandings, but you know what we talk about is usually poisons and stuff. But because of the way, the fact that they are not able to help schools out that have lead right now because that department is gone. The fact that they
what do you even say?
The fact that they can't test milk as well because the people aren't there to do it. So it's just something that is definitely relevant to what we talk about. So it's something that we should discuss when it comes to the health side of things.
Yeah, I have no words. It's well, I have plenty of words. Let's not lie.
Like the Pope. Didn't the Pope say that about America? Do you have any words for America? Many.
Is that what he said?
He's from here. He's from Chicago, right?
He's from Chicago.
The newest Pope.
He's a White Sox fan.
So
yes, we've had discussions about this where like the content we make is not supposed to be tainted by politics. We're here for the clinical side of things, for the deep dive, true crime, historical. We want to get lost in the minutia. We want to do, like for you, it's like a hyper focus. You enjoy it so much, and that's why you dig. That's why you do the research to the degree that you do. But the political side of things is just Yes,
this is about facts.
Yes,
no,
and it seems, and I just recently started using this term. We're living in a post-truth society. It's a post-truth society. It kind of just doesn't matter what's true. Truth mattering is contextual.
Relative.
It depends on who you're talking to. It depends on who's got their hand on the levers of power, and it's just insane to us as healthcare workers that now we would have a measles outbreak in the United States in 2025. It is clinically and morally unacceptable. Bottom line.
Yeah, I will say I think that would have happened despite who was, just because there's a whole community that already is into that, and it spreads so quickly. But he's not helping. So
He's not helping at all. And his entire shtick is skeptical hedonism.
Yeah. Well, he did say
how I describe it.
that people shouldn't take his advice when it comes to health.
Okay. I need a nap. What are you talking about, brother? Just give me the job. I'm not qualified either, but I'm not gonna kill anybody.
Yeah,
I
don't think. Yeah,
I'm more qualified than he is. Let me be honest. Oh, okay. All right.
So there we are.
That's gonna take us to poison in the news. This is a doozy. You sent me this the other day.
Yeah.
So in a suburb of in southwest Memphis, Boxtown, Tennessee, the southwest part of Memphis, up against Musk's Colossus supercomputer, a Memphis neighborhood fights for clean air. Okay, so XAI, also known as Grok, it takes an absolute truckload of computing power to power this AI, as many AIs do. The subheading says XAI says it's working collaboratively with local officials. Words are hard, with local officials, but Boxtown residents remain wary. You can see some photos here. In South Memphis, advocates and residents are fighting the use of methane gas turbines for XAI supercomputer Colossus. Okay.
Smelly.
Yeah. So basically, and you can see the thumbnail of this video here, that's the facility right there. This is a repurposed Electrolux factory. It was been closed down for years. There's actually, there's a local church that you and I have actually both been to, that one of their campuses here in town, that one of their campuses is a former Electrolux building. Yes.
I don't remember.
City leaders see Elon Musk's arrival in Memphis as a coronation of its future economy, a chance to transform the region into a high-tech manufacturing hub. Like their counterparts in Austin, Texas, and Atlanta, they were eager to recruit tech companies looking for homes outside of Silicon Valley. Musk XAI would bring tax revenue and jobs, and that's always the carrot at the end of the stick.
And nothing.
Yeah, Mayor Paul Young says, it represents a tremendous opportunity for us to take our economy to the next level and also quadruple the cancer rate. Thanks, Mayor Young.
not the next level.
Yeah. But in an area beset by industrial pollution, residents are wary of the methane gas turbines helping power the electricity-hungry behemoth. The turbines give off nitrogen oxides, a key contributor to smog, and formaldehyde, among other pollutants, according to their manufacturer. Residents say public input has been limited, and the company hasn't been transparent about its plans. XAI has vowed to stay below allowed limits on pollutants. In response to questions from NBC News, the company defended its process. XAI works collaboratively with county and city officials that we have all bought off, EPA personnel, which there's like 4 of those left, and community leaders regarding all things that affect Memphis. It said in a statement, adding that its tax revenue will support vital programs and services. You guys want that tax revenue? Still, residents of Boxtown, and here's the kicker. Residents of Boxtown, a nearly all-black community, have their doubts. How do we really know what is coming from those facilities, says Sarah Gladney, 71 years old. They can tell us anything, but how do we really know? Great question, Sarah. Mm-hmm. Great question. Their skepticism has deep roots. For decades, outsiders with big plans have come and gone, sometimes leaving the air worse than they found it. So they go on to, detail how this this neighborhood, the Boxtown part of Memphis in Shelby County, Tennessee, is exploited regularly by, large industry. There's a picture of the guy running the Colossus facility. He's literally wearing an XAI t-shirt and hat. he got drowned out by people chanting, "People over property, people over property."
Well, these are also like these places. Like it's like when I covered Cancer Alley in Louisiana.
Yes,
For a bonus episode, they pick these places that have less influencer voice.
that's right.
You know, because or people that are forgotten about. You know, or that kind of thing, and it's not right, but you know they keep doing it.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah. Here's an older picture. Box Sign residence James Threadford Jr. front, Albertly Wright collect firewood in 1961. And in the back, you can see this monster of a power plant. And this is 1951. This is before the creation of the EPA. So God knows what's coming out of those smokestacks.
Yeah.
So yeah, they include photos of, people just turning out. I mean, overcrowding public hearings with, the county commission. Yeah, and here, this young lady is Kashawn Preston. Where's she at? Or excuse me, no. Kashawn Pearson, excuse me, is the president of the Memphis Community Against Pollution. It's a civic group, and he says they always come to Southwest Memphis. They always come to what they believe is the path of least resistance. And I'm just glad to see them mounting some sort of effort to fight back. Here's Kashawn right here. They got some photos of Kashawn getting his hair cut in the barbershop, man. That's a whole vibe. So anyway, yeah, supercomputer that powers Grok AI in Southwest Memphis, Tennessee, is slowly polluting the air. The residents say they can't really go outside because the air stinks and it's tough to breathe.
Like asthma cases and stuff.
Yeah.
And such.
All right. That's it for Poison in the News. Story time. I escaped a religious cult 7 years ago. Without going into too much detail here, let me just say it was an extremely difficult journey. My mental health spiraled downhill, and I thankfully had enough presence of mind to seek out a therapist to work through what was going on with me. My therapist helped give me context to all the wild things I had walked away from. He was kind, patient, and guided me through what my new normal might look like. I had never had healthy boundaries in my life. Therapy helped show me that, as a result of being in a cult or a high control group, I had never fully become my own person. It's a shocking thing to learn at the age of 32. I learned how to communicate to the people around me what I was going to do, and more importantly, not do with my time, energy, and resources. BetterHelp is the sponsor of this episode, and they're on a mission to make starting therapy easier. BetterHelp is a platform where therapists and their clients can communicate effectively and get the most out of therapy. There's a journal inside the platform for personal reflection, and there are group sessions on a number of different topics available every day. Starting therapy is easy with BetterHelp. Fill out a questionnaire, and you will match with a therapist in as little as a couple of days. One of the best features of BetterHelp is that if the first therapist doesn't feel like the right fit, you can easily switch to another one until you find someone you really connect with. They carefully make sure therapists on the platform are well qualified, and their customer support team is there to help you if you have any questions. With over 7,000 reviews and a 4.5 rating on Trustpilot, BetterHelp is a platform you can trust. If you're struggling and think you'd benefit from a therapy session, go to betterhelp.com/almanac or choose the Poisoner's Almanac during sign up and get 10% off your first month of therapy. That'll bring us to housekeeping for the old podcast. Make sure to follow us on whatever platform you're listening on or watching on, or subscribe. Whatever the buttons say to do, just push the buttons, please. Thanks in advance for leaving 5-star reviews on all the platforms you guys are listening to. Those are really piling up on Spotify. Thank you all for that. Be sure to follow us on social media. We have we have links in the show notes. There is now a dedicated podcast, TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. We are now posting our video episodes to the podcast YouTube. So please do check that out. If you're listening on a mobile device, be sure to screenshot that and tag us and post it. And we would love to reshare that and interact with you all. The Patreon is up and running. Links in the show notes to join as a supporter of the show. And let us know what kind of content you'd like to see on the Patreon. Patrons get perks, including the ability to leave a voicemail that we can listen to here on the podcast and respond to. You get access to weekly bonus episodes that my wonderful wife also puts together in the middle of the week. And you also get shouted out by name on the podcast. And those people are as follows: 87 Pens Girl 71, Mara Santiago, Grace Lahan, Genevieve, Nahev Shatrit, Jay Went, Inken Hafner, Kiri Orsek, Tay of Sunshine, Monique, Shanar, Sue Steves, James Mills, Megan Geiler, Liz B, Willie Wolf NZ, Mama G, Nicole Rivers, Richard Miyako, Heather Nolan, Kaylee, Sasha Rubel, Maya Shostak, Maggie's Yarm, Ogre the Viking, Lynn Rocket, Brett Moser, Zaid, Neil Houdini, Nicole Crane, Jefferson Vargas, Carmen Q, Sarah G, Knittin Ninja, Estar, Olive Octopus, Betsy Rich, T-Bug, Christine Moljadi, Morgan Brittingham, Blaufrosch, a.k.a. Clara Jurisons, Vix, Anne Maria, Carl Ziegler Jr., Clyde, Jennifer Wilson Richter, Macaulay Sterling, Too Fidgety, Wendy G, Elena M.K., Vilma Anderson, Caitlin Martin, Pungrammed 101, Minnesota SPT, Tasha, Stuart Slattery, Simone Valdez, Christian Scradergaard, Maria Anna, Bonnie, Oma D, Ryanel Alara, Kristen Arnold, Aaron Carey, Lynn Simpson, Melissa Emmel, Desiree Davis, Jennifer Ramirez Johnson, Dalek Party, The Warped Witch, Sometimes Jules, Mr. Slave, Dizzy Dancer, Creative Otter, Yadmit, Supergirl Sway, Rachel, Anya Brandt, Ebby, Leah Marie Matson, Lady Digitalis, Jesse, Shay 10, Julia Franzoni, Sparks, Gloria Eichmann, Thomas Huff, From Strings to Things, Soy Kasumi, Jessica Gasparini, Robert Jr., Kate Lannon, Ron Mack, Donna Lankianisi. I'm hoping I'm saying that right, Donna. And
Sounds
also welcome some brand new patrons: Lauren Smith, Anna G, and Serpentine Fire.
Ooh,
Thank you
that's
all
cool.
for supporting the podcast through Patreon. Feel free to send us questions or content suggestions with a DM or a comment somewhere on socials or on the Patreon. And I'm going to post the link to leave us a voicemail in the Patreon soon, so you guys can jump in there. If you haven't left us a voicemail yet and you're a patron, what are you doing? Just jump in that link, leave us a voicemail. You can literally just, record yourself making a bowl of oatmeal. You don't even have to talk.
Why oatmeal?
I don't know, because I eat oatmeal a lot. Or just
Cool.
record yourself talking to your dog if it makes you more comfortable.
Puppies.
Yes. All right. So I have heard, a little bird told me that today we are talking about prions.
Yes. So late last night, just shaking my computer around. Late last night, I decided, I say late, I mean like 11:30, I decided this is going to have to be 2 parts because there was still, like, I'd only gotten through 2 of the main topics I wanted to get through. Aren't you proud of me? I decided that.
I was just about to say how proud I am, because Becca's habit in the past was, we'll just do a 6-hour podcast. It'll be fine. Adam will be fine.
You know how detailed I like to be, and
Yes.
I like to make sure people understand what the heck I'm talking about instead of just jumping in on some like random topic.
Okay, but let's be real. You've got a microbiologist saying this is really great stuff.
Sweet. Yeah, and but so yeah, there's been these certain infections, or these certain infectious diseases that have just long been on my mind, and they're not caused by bacteria, they're not caused by fungus or virus, they're not caused by toxins, and while some are genetically passed down, they are not exactly like other genetic predispositions to illness, really. This is a subject that past and present scientists, veterinarians, and the medical community have all either feared or awed at. Honestly, probably both. It's partly because of the fact that it goes against previous held beliefs after germ theory was confirmed and laid out, and partly because it's deadly with no cure and incredibly difficult to destroy even outside the body. Yeah. Now, before encountering these diseases, though some do go back as far as like the 1800s, maybe even further than that for what we know, and after the realization of germ theory and microbiology, it was believed that only microbes that have genetic information, such as bacteria and viruses, so like, with RNA, DNA, could cause illness. It needed to be alive, essentially. I say alive because technically viruses aren't considered alive. They're kind of in this gray
Right.
area. They have some traits of a living organism, but um, they have genetic material. They do evolve, but um, they don't. They're not made up of cells. They need a host to make energy and replicate. It's complicated, so they're not technically considered to be alive. So yeah, we're not talking about bacteria, virus, fungus, or toxin. So what are we talking about? Prions. Prions. Prions.
Mm-hmm.
Prions are not all bad. It is actually the prion diseases that we are discussing. For context, however, let's talk about what a prion is first.
Yes, because it's kind of obscure.
Yeah. A prion is a protein that's able to change shape and become infectious, or it can become, infectious. So, what we have always been taught about proteins, they are the building blocks of life, right? But the
Yeah.
name, the name prion was coined in 1982 by Stanley Prusiner. I think it's Prusiner. I'm pretty sure he's still alive, so he's gonna be mad if I say his name wrong. I've heard he can be kind of an egoist, but he's a chemist, and he was studying them around that time. It was supposed to be a cross between the name. The name itself, prion, is supposed to be a cross between proteinaceous and infectious. Like I said, he is still alive today. He's like 82 years old now. He actually won the Nobel Prize in Physiology and Medicine in 1997 for his discovery of prions. Um, like, because
97.
these diseases
Oh.
were around for a while, and people were like, "What is this? What is causing this?" Like, they could not, because they were like, "We can't find evidence of a virus or bacteria. Something is wrong. There has to be something." Um, And a lot of people who were deep into medicine, like, in their minds, it was like, it has to be bacteria, it has to be virus, it has to be something like that causing this. So they weren't really able to think outside the box when it came to, like, maybe it's not any of those, maybe it's actually this, maybe it's actually a protein. Because that just hadn't been heard of before, right? So yeah, prions basically came from his conclusion that they were made up solely of protein. And this wasn't just his conclusion. There were actually others before him who had this idea, including an English mathematician named John Stanley Griffith and a radiologist. Her name was Tikva Alper. I hope I'm saying that right. She was born to Jewish refugees in South Africa. But yeah, they had hypothesized back in the 1960s, that the cause of these unknown illnesses in animals and humans were infectious agents consisting of just proteins. So the idea had been around for a little bit. Now, Tikva also discovered that even radiation could not kill a particle of this disease that they were studying. Like, they did a lot of things to see if they could destroy it, and it was pretty rough. So
Yeah.
yeah, not even radiation. There had been another Nobel Prize winner on the subject before Prusiner, Dr. Carlton Gajdusek. Probably saying his name wrong, but he's an interesting fellow.
Okay.
Um, he was a physician and medical researcher. He liked being in the field a lot. He worked on Kuru, which is another disease with mysterious origins. We're going to talk about that one next week, actually. But Gajusek
Okay.
had long held onto the idea that they were looking for an unconventional virus. He could not let go of the whole, like, it has to be a virus somehow. But he had previously called it a slow virus because of the time it took for animals infected, um, like, during research to show signs of the illness. It felt like a latent kind of infection of sorts. Now, in his view, the disease started in one animal, then was transmitted to humans once they ate that animal, or when humans ate other humans. We'll discuss all
Oh,
of
okay.
that. We'll discuss all of that next week.
It's
And
not a
we'll
typical vector I'm thinking of.
we'll discuss Gadusek a little more next week as well. He had some issues. We'll talk about that later, though. So stay tuned for that. Now, I want to talk more, like I said, about prion diseases, what they are. Perhaps one of the scarier aspects of prion diseases is that they start from within one's own proteins. So you are not so much infected by some outside source, such as with bacteria or a virus. It was well known for some time, however, that injecting tissue of an animal with one of these diseases into a healthy animal would lead that animal to also become ill and die. So it can be infectious in that way. But it's so from an outsider's perspective, it acts in some ways like a virus, but it isn't one. And that's what was confusing for a lot of people trying to figure out what was causing this illness, right?
Right.
Now, proteins, just breaking it down a little bit, if you remember from high school biology, or I don't know, if you took a life science of some sort in college, these are proteins are essential molecules made up of these long chains of amino acids linked together by peptide bonds. They fold into specific structures depending on their function. And as I mentioned, they are the building blocks of tissues, but they also have various important roles within the body. I feel like just saying it that way is so general and like, what does that even mean? They're the building block. Okay, what does that mean? It's like saying the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell.
Powerhouse of the cell,
What do
baby.
you mean?
Tell you what.
So yeah, there are about 20 different types of amino acids, and it is the various sequences of these that basically give the protein made by them its shape and therefore its job. Like one thing you learn in anatomy and physiology is like, I think it's like form gives function, something like that. Probably not exactly how it's said, but it's, it's connected. So yeah, some are important for structure, such as collagen and keratin, like collagen and the skin, keratin, hair and nails, that kind of thing, amongst other. I'm just giving the base, the ones we all can see, right? Others involved as enzymes. So you got like the biological catalysts in your body that you need to kind of speed up chemical reactions. So lipase for digestion of fats, lactase, breaking down of sugars, all those like other things those kinds of things. All the ACEs.
That's right.
Also things involved in blood clotting. So very important stuff. Some are important for transport. Hemoglobin, it's very important for staying alive. You need that.
True.
Got to get that oxygen, to those organs. Now, some are storage based. You've got ferritin for iron storage. Still others are hormones, insulin. So there are hundreds of thousands and possibly millions of different proteins in the body. So I can't list them all, obviously, but these are just some examples that, are kind of easy to remember. Proteins have been known about since the 1830s, when the name was coined by Swedish chemist John Jacob Berzelius. Yes, his name is John Jacob, not Jingleheimer Schmidt.
Yeah. I was about to say it.
Oh, that song was stuck in my head after I saw this name, and I was like, okay. So
it was like it had to have been like Michael Scott with "That's What She Said." Like there's just a compulsion to sing that song out loud.
I know, and I think I even I was reading, and I think I even said aloud, "Okay, great." Now I got that song stuck in my head.
Okay, universe, you win.
Anyway, he got this name protein from the Greek word proteus, which means first or primary. So just a fun little fact about words and such.
Yes.
So back to Stanley Prusiner, who coined the name prion. He also put forth a theory that not only were these prions made of primarily protein, and this was not well liked at all by the scientific or medical communities at the time, because protein wasn't a virus or bacteria. Like they didn't think it could do such a thing, right? So they were like, that's ridiculous. But turns out it's not. Now there were also two kinds. So he basically theorized that there are two kinds, one infectious and one not infectious. Basically one like a good one and a bad one, right? You have you have prions that are doing normal, healthy functions, but then you have the prions that get bad prions. So, yeah. He stated during his long research that he had found the gene that made the prion, claiming it was on chromosome 20. And there were actually more like 700 plus genes that like make these proteins, but it was a start. His theory was that the non-infectious prions stay folded in their unique way and carried out whatever their functions were, which were kind of unknown at that time. Those that were infectious started from one mutated protein that on contact made the other proteins kind of shift to that malformed shape. Right? Kind of like one of those games where it's like well, I've played plenty of Roblox because Camilla likes Roblox, but there are some games where it's like if the thing touches you, like you become a zombie too, or now you have to chase people around, you know. So you're it. So, but yeah. So the protein itself was contagious in its own way. So that's how it is infectious. It turns other proteins to be like it. I said earlier that dude had said he found the gene that made the prion protein, but genes technically just give the instructions on how to make proteins. Like, so you've got your transcription, and it gives these instructions onto an mRNA molecule, which then takes it to ribosomes, where the codons are read, and tRNA, which is like transfer RNA, brings corresponding amino acids to fit the codons. So it's like trying to fit that code with these particular amino acids, making them into this chain, which is a polypeptide chain. That's what they call it. But once finished, this long chain folds according to the instructions, amino acid sequences. And the ribosome links these into a chain. So you've got your polypeptide chain at this point. Once finished, this long chain folds according to the instructions / amino acid sequence into a functional protein. So it's a whole process. You've got, the gene is like, here's the instructions, and the mRNA is like, cool. And so it takes it to the ribosomes, and like the ribosomes are like Terry from Soul. He's like, the count is off. Like like he's got to like find like the code, And so then you got your transfer RNA. So within the instructions that have been given over by those genes, you have a specific code for that specific function and shape, for this protein to do. And so it builds it according to that. And the ribosome just sort of ziplocks it. It's kind of a fun way of putting that. But
yeah, it's true.
Yeah. I hope that makes sense in a way. I always see pictures of it happening in my head as I'm saying it. So I'm hoping I'm getting through to somebody.
Yes.
On how that works.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, they're basically infiltrating the protein synthesis engine of your cells, and that engine is programmed to build proteins according to what the mRNA provides it with. So it builds it, but it's a flawed version of what it's supposed to be building.
Yeah. So what the bad prions are anyway. Now, and then once that chain is finished, once the code has been read and the chain is finished, it folds up like it's supposed to according to the instructions. So
that's right.
So what this dude found, Prosener found, was that was what we now call the gene, the PRNP gene. Okay. This gene, in the way I just mentioned, makes the prion protein, or you could say PRP, prion protein, which, if normal, PRPC has since been discovered to play a role in brain development and maintenance of the neurological system, specifically like the making of the myelin sheath of nerves, that kind of thing. They're still being studied. So the list of roles that they play may grow as they continue that. Now, when a mutation occurs in the PRNP gene, misfolded prions, so the PRP SC, which are going to be your infectious ones, your bad ones, may come about. So these particular prions can tag other proteins that will also become misfolded, as they are. This is where prion disease occurs and can be genetic/hereditary.
Are you able to see the diagram that I'm sharing, or is that only on my screen?
I see it.
Yeah, so it's labeled just the terms you just used, the PRPC and the PRPSC. Yeah, this kind of explains that.
Yeah, so you've got your normal, and then you've got your misfolded. Like it's just sort of, it's crooked.
It is.
So,
and protein conformation is a big deal because it determines how a protein will interact with other molecules.
Yeah, and so as it tags other proteins, it basically is like, hey, do the things I do, be like me. And of course, it conforms because peer pressure, protein peer pressure.
The PPP, if you will.
Oh my God. I just. So.
What? No. Say it, please.
No. I'm just, yeah. I'm just, I'm trying to come up with like ways of explaining it in terms that, like, I guess all of us kind of understand too.
Oh, well,
Because
I
a
was
lot
going
of
to
this stuff
mention.
gets complicated.
Yes, this is organic chemistry, cell biology. But I was going to mention this is, okay, like when COVID vaccines were manufactured, they prompt human mRNA to produce a particular spike protein on the surface of cells that prevents the COVID virus from infecting a cell.
Yeah, so it gives it the instructions to do that. That's all. Yeah,
Right.
that's what they do.
It totally gives it it equips a cell to resist infection by a virus, and it does that through the particular structure of a spike protein that pokes up out of the cell membrane.
Yeah, I remember when the COVID vaccines were coming out, and there were some people that were like, "Oh no, this is new, and we've never heard of mRNA before." And I'm like, "Well, that's a shame because you got it
You've
in your
never heard
body."
of anything.
My point is like, you've got mRNA in your body, so it's kind of a shame that you've never heard of it. But it's just messenger RNA is what it is.
Of course. Of course.
So what is shocking, however, is that prions can just sort of become malformed and cause disease sporadically. In this case, there has been no case in the family or a real reason for the disease to show up or be present. So it can just happen sporadically, it's rare that your body it just does that, but it is a possibility. And a third way is transmission via infected meat or contaminated medical equipment. Okay. Remember, I told you it is very difficult to destroy prions. So, and if something's contaminated and not good.
Yeah, let me ask you about that real quick. Like normally, especially extreme high temperatures can denature a protein, but you're saying that's not an option here with prions?
It has to, in order for a prion to be destroyed, you would have to have a sustained heat at temperatures of 900 degrees Fahrenheit and above for several hours.
Brother, we'll just set it on fire.
For several hours.
Yeah. I need this to burn for several hours if you guys don't mind.
You can't just like boil it or heat it up and then it's like, oh, cool. Like you boil water for a minute and it's like, okay, clean. It's not. It takes a lot more than that. It's very difficult. Radiation won't kill it. Radiation won't destroy it. I had a whole list of things they tried to do in this book I was reading, which I will come back to that book a little later too. Here, I'll look up the name of the book too, so you'll have it. It's called The Family Who Couldn't Sleep.
Yeah, okay.
By D.T. Max. Yeah. So it was a really good book. I used it as a good bit of resource for this episode, as well as some online sources as well. But yeah, so contaminated medical equipment can be a problem as well. Now, So surgery patients, biopsy patients, and even care of bodies like that are confirmed or even suspected to have died from a prion disease are handled with great care and caution, usually involving those performing procedures, whether it's autopsy, surgery, a biopsy, or lab technicians, by wearing full personal protective equipment with an N95 and eye protection, or even a full-on hood. Like they take it very seriously. While it's not contagious from like person to person when that person is alive, it may be so if exposed to certain infectious tissues. So, like if you're cutting somebody open, if it gets not say that word,
Let's
aerosolized,
try that again.
aerosolized, it can be infectious that way. So, brain tissue, eye tissue, and pituitary tissues are considered high risk specimens, and direct contact with these should be avoided. Cerebrospinal fluid, kidney, liver, spleen, lung, lymph nodes, placenta, and olfactory epithelium tissues are all considered low risk, meaning you should still take precautions. And blood, serum, urine, feces, and sputum are considered no risk. So, like if you're taking blood to the lab, that kind of thing. I mean, when you take blood from somebody, you should be wearing gloves anyway. Not all nurses do. I understand that. I've seen but like it just feels icky if I'm not. Anyway, gloves are good. So, what are these diseases? We've talked about protons, prions, how they can become misshapen, that kind of thing. But what are these diseases? Because there's quite a few. We're only going to talk about two of them today, and we're going to talk about some more next week because it gets crazy. So let's start with the first one that was described. This is one that doesn't infect humans, but it is important as one that humans kind of first witnessed. I'm not saying like that other prion diseases didn't exist around this time, but this is what we have like evidence in writing for. Now, imagine having this itch that you cannot scratch. And when you do, it doesn't help anyway because it's all in your head for real this time. Like it's actually all in your head. Like your brain is telling you there's an itch, but there actually is no itch. So there is no scratching of said itch. This is what Scrapie is apparently like for sheep. Scrapie was described as far back as the 18th century, but there is some evidence it was around in lower incidences before that, out in the countryside regions of Europe. Specifically, it was described in 1732 in the UK, possibly earlier in 1642, and in 1750 in Germany. The name actually comes from the scraping on the sheep as they try to scratch the itch they feel on their backs and like just above the tail on various objects. So the wool gets damaged and ripped, and the skin will often be raw from just the scraping. Now, other signs and symptoms for the sheep include changes in behavior, such as becoming aggressive, charging or fleeing from people or sheepdogs. They're usually pretty docile and chill, but they become just cray cray. Cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, right? So I also saw that they will smack their lips like very noisily, like if you scratch them under the chin. I know that sounds very specific, but they don't normally do that. Like it's just a weird thing that they've noticed. So just strange behaviors, aggressive behaviors, that kind of thing. Now, the disease is fatal. There is no cure, even now. It became a big problem, though, in the 1800s. And this problem kind of started with the growth in human population, which in turn led to food shortages and such. Now, according to author D.T. Max, he's the one that actually wrote the book I was mentioning earlier. England alone had almost 3 times as many people in 1850 as in 1750. Now, this was also going on around the time of the Enlightenment, the age of reason, science, searching for meaning and progress. And This was kind of also an age of like optimism versus pessimism. I'm sure that happens in many an age, but just stay with me. You're going to
But
have
you hate.
you're going to have philosophers that are like, progress, this is wonderful, blah blah blah. And you're going to have other philosophers, authors that are like, stuff's going to go down. We can't maintain this. We're all going to die.
Yeah.
Right? That's in any age, honestly, but there was a reason for it in this age, and that has to do with the population growth kind of thing. So, yeah, many were worrying about the shortage of food as the population rose, and these people began trying to concoct ways to increase production in food, mainly meat, right? Now, the more pessimistic turned their thinking towards more Thanos-inspired ideas, especially like Thomas Malthus. Malthus was he was the guy that put forth the idea of the Malthusian collapse. I don't know if you've ever heard of this.
Okay.
You may have heard Malthusian problem, Malthusian something. Now, this particular idea was, in his words, the power of population is so superior to the power of the earth to produce subsistence for man that premature death must in some shape or other visit the human race.
Oh my God. That's Thanos 100%.
Here's Bummer Man. He delivers.
Oh man.
So yeah, he's like that Scrooge boomer that hates every younger generation or is like racist, misogynist, or classist. Like not all of them are, but like we all know someone who is, right?
But a lot of them are.
you know the ones I mean.
Yes.
You know the ones I mean. Now he stated in his Principle of Population that humans by nature are inert, sluggish, and averse from labor unless compelled by necessity. Okay. Darn lazy millennials.
Nobody wants to work anymore.
At least he was counting himself in this too. I mean, he said he himself is human. So he was also against the old poor laws set up by Queen Victoria the First in 1601. These were to help feed and house the poor through the church or other such organizations. Now, he believed that feeding and treating the poor well would lead to them reproducing and creating more poor people and make the population increase so that famine would be inevitable.
Sure. Because I am not poor because I set it up that way.
Now, so the new poor laws, we've talked a little bit about this before when we talked about like medieval type stuff, but the new poor laws that basically took away this old system to replace it with prisons and workhouses, which were awful for the poor, was pretty much based on this ideology, right? If we'll just make it so that they don't want to reproduce, we'll make their lives miserable. They won't want to reproduce, and then that'll slow the population growth.
It's absolutely absurd that a human could concoct this regarding their other fellow humans. I love it.
I mean, also it didn't work. I don't know.
Wow. Anyway,
so Malthus also argued that the only checks on population growth that were these positive checks like famine and disease. So he says, oh, that's positive, so it gets rid of people. And preventive checks like moral restraint, celibacy, and just not getting married. Or preventing like the poor getting married, I guess,
This is the bad place.
Making it hard to do so that they can't, so therefore they can't have, and this will lead eventually into eugenics. So give me a sec.
Oh, 100%. Oh, it's right next door, friend. Don't worry.
Yeah. Now, I don't know if he thought it would go that far, but this was used to support that sort of thing later. So, he believed that any assistance to the poor would ultimately lead to more poverty, as it would allow the poor to reproduce without the natural constraints of poverty.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Okay.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, his ideas would also go on to influence policymakers to embrace social Darwinism and eugenics. resulting in these like measures to restrict particular populations' family size, including forced sterilizations.
Yeah, yeah. And the great thing about all of these ways of thinking is that it never leads to war. So it's fine.
So yeah, like these would include sterilizations of people who had traits that people didn't see as beneficial. Maybe
being left-handed.
I mean, yeah. Also, if you were of a particular people of a particular race, they did it to Native Americans. Black people. It was done to many people who had mental disorders. That sort of thing. So that's where some of that comes from. Actually, a lot of it comes from that. Now, obviously, Malthus was wrong for many reasons. Humans are pretty good at finding solutions to problems. Of course, some humans are the problem, but stay with me.
Yeah, you felt that when you said it. I just want you to know. I could tell that you enjoyed saying that.
But since the Industrial Revolution, resource production, including like within agriculture, has actually become more efficient. And while not everyone has access to it for different reasons, we can provide food for the masses. Basically, we can produce more. We can provide more. But like I said, not everybody has access to it for other different reasons.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not saying that there will never be a problem in the future, just that the idea of population growth will always lead to famine is just not true.
The sheer amount of crop yield explosion in America alone. Like, and by the way, access to clean water could be fixed tomorrow by a billionaire.
Of course.
The money to fix that, somebody's already got it.
I mean,
100,000 people on the planet already have enough money to do it.
Many problems could be fixed, but
of course. But why would we do that? Why don't we just get more money and power?
So yeah, not that famine wasn't a problem at the time that this was happening, but but yeah, now that we have more efficient ways of farming and such, like
yeah.
Now, also, you shouldn't kill people or sterilize people that you don't like.
Listen, I'm going to go out on a limb and tell you guys.
Don't do that.
Don't do that. The Poisoner's Almanac is anti-murder. I hope this helps.
Yeah. It's just now back to Scrapie. Population growth was making people nervous, obviously, especially since agricultural growth was non-existent at the time. So what to do, right? One common livestock breeder who, I say common, I mean like he wasn't a noble or whatever. He was just, a poor sheep. But
this actually developed over the course of a single week after showing up. Symptoms first showed up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but this particular livestock breeder, he also liked money a lot. His name was Robert Bakewell, who he was working with sheep out in, is it Leicester? Leicester?
What is that? Is that in the United Kingdom?
Yeah, Leicester.
I think it's pronounced Leicester.
Leicester?
Mm-hmm. And I only know this. People, UK listeners, let us know.
Leicester.
Leicester. Y'all know where I'm talking about. No, I only know this because of Bleak House.
Jane Austen. Oh,
no.
I mean, close enough. Okay, Charles
because
Dickens.
Because the aristocratic man who's married to Gillian Anderson's character in that rendition of Bleak House, he is Sir Leicester. And I remember his name being in the subtitles, and I was like, "Oh, that's a strange way to spell." But they just, I think that's how they pronounce that.
No, well,
but let us know in the comments, please.
Yeah, I've never been to the UK. I'd love to come. I promise if I do, I will research how to pronounce all the places.
Oh man,
but yes,
we'll gallivant all across Europe one day. It's one of our couple's goals.
So, yeah, looking at the sheep that were living at this time, they were bony, thin. They needed to graze a lot, but didn't really produce all that much meat, even when they did. So he thought of ways to get the perfect sheep through breeding. Now, a perfect sheep would be bigger in the chest and rump areas, so more meat could be had to feed, people. Even then, they're going to mark up the prices of meat probably anyway because people. Now, being a breeder, he understood that body shape was passed down genetically, so he paired sheep with the best traits for breeding. And by the 1740s, the sheep there started getting bigger and producing more meat like he had wanted. Now, at this point, Bakewell was breeding rams with their offspring and their offspring's offspring. Gross and weird, I know. This was known as breeding in and in, so inbreeding. Okay. Now, this was taboo at the time as well, like even for sheep. Okay. But it seemed to be giving Bakewell results. For example, the average weight of a sheep in 1710 was about 28 pounds, and a lamb was 18 pounds. After using this method, by 1795, an average sheep was 80 pounds and a lamb was 50 pounds. So, and so they were meatier. But Spanish wool from Spanish sheep, merinos, were still the best out there for textiles. And in this case, like Spain refused to sell these sheep to anyone on the outside. I mean, they were making big money on exporting that wool to England anyway.
Proprietary, baby.
So, so another guy who liked money, Sir Joseph Banks,
Mr. Banks.
Well, I think it's funny too because he likes money, Sir Banks.
Of course.
He thought that he had this idea to get some sheep on the black market, if you will, basically through contraband merchants and like bribery. So he got a few dozen of those so he could breed his own sheep with those and to give others to do the same, These sheep did not do very well there, and a lot of them actually started dying off. I don't know if they were just sick or if it was the climate. I'm not sure, but yeah, they didn't do very well there. So they were also inbred after they had offspring as well. So you've got them breeding with these other sheep, and then next thing you know, they're doing the whole inbreeding thing where it's like they've got those rams breeding with their offspring's offsprings, and So the breeders were trying to keep up these traits that made the meat superior and the wool superior, right? I know. Becca, why are you telling us about inbreeding sheep?
Oh, this is always going somewhere. Nobody ever doubt Becca. She is giving you the background for everything. She deeply researches. You guys know the deal.
And here's a picture you can look up, to be honest. If any of you ever heard of the Habsburgs in history, the Habsburgs family? Have you ever heard of that family?
Yeah, I think so.
You ever heard of the Habsburg chin?
It's right here on the. Oh dear.
These, yeah, you'll know if you know anything about these guys, you'll know why inbreeding is bad news because there was a lot of bad stuff that happened with these guys.
Oh dear.
Just genetically speaking.
Yeah,
so
that's pretty gruesome.
Inbreeding reduces the variety of genes within the population, which can lead to the expression of recessive genes, including harmful recessive genes, and making that animal more susceptible to environmental changes and disease. Okay. So that's where this increase in Scrapie comes in. The prion disease that affects sheep began to infect more and more sheep, making them ill and killing them because it's always fatal. Now, any sheep that had been bred with an infected sheep, and you wouldn't always know right away because it would take like years sometimes for the signs to show, would likely be also infected. So Scrapie got way out of hand, as you can imagine. These sheep showed the signs I mentioned, but also were holding their heads in a strange, like fixed, spasmodic sort of way. They had this distant look in their eyes. Just, you could tell there was something off about these sheep. They would become uncoordinated, falling over, pressing their heads on the ground, and eventually dying. Just
so every millennial right now.
And it was always fatal. So,
You got this far off look in their eyes. Their heads are at a strange angle all the time. It's the weight of the world pushing us down.
so
By the way, I have to mention this. Amy Poehler has a podcast now, and it's fantastic.
uh,
She said something so great on regarding generational types. And this is kind of as a joke. It's a oversimplification for the sake of being funny. But boomers are all about the money. Gen X are like, is it all about money? Millennials are like, where's the money? And Gen Z is like, what's money?
yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, obviously, as with human ailments, farmers and breeders tried various cures: turpentine, tobacco, mercury, arsenic,
Bloodletting.
lots of different things. And nothing helped. It was also blamed on various issues other than the inbreeding, such as the wind, overheated pens, too much or too little food, one of
The
those,
poor.
and maggots as well. So,
well,
yeah.
poor maggots, not the middle class maggots, like the poor maggots. They're the worst.
I don't know. I don't know if I've ever met middle class maggots.
Oh,
So
they're perfectly charming.
one of my favorite quotes, honestly, is the one that's like, at the end of the game, the king and the pawn go back in the same box. Anyway, now veterinarians doing necropsies on the sheep, these are like autopsies of animals, could not agree basically what had caused this issue. The cause would not really be discovered until much later, but the problem did slow up a little bit once Australia was colonized by the English and the sheep business kind of moved over there. There was lots of room for grazing over there and such, so that just kind of got pushed over there. The European sheep market basically just failed around this time anyway. So breeding in and in, or inbreeding, was left behind when this took place. And while Scrapie did not disappear entirely, it became much less of a problem. So then comes the knowledge of germs with Pasteur and Robert Koch, and it was just kind of they decided to just kind of throw Scrapie into that box as well. They're like, oh, well, it must be one of these things, right? Now, the disease would show up in America sometime later in 1947 when some sheep were imported to Michigan from Britain. It has since spread and is sometimes a problem here as well, still on and off. Okay. So tired? Are we tired of sheep? Are we tired in general?
I think we're all caught up on sheep.
Well, let's talk about a prion disease that will steal your sleep, which rhymes with sheep.
Hey.
And this one, now this one does cause disease in humans, but like Scrapie, this prion disease might have been around since the 1700s. It would not have been identified as a prion disease or given that name, the name that it now has, until about 1986, though. This is a horrible and scary illness, and it is always fatal. There is no cure. That sucks. This one is called familial fatal insomnia. Familial because it is usually inherited, but it can also be sporadic, in which it would be sporadic fatal insomnia, which is rare, thankfully. Now, the book I mentioned earlier on prion disease, The Family That Couldn't Sleep by D.T. Max, actually tells the story about this Italian family who couldn't sleep. According to him, and this is in his words, for at least 2 centuries, its members have suffered from an inherited prion disease called familial fatal insomnia that strikes them usually in their 50s, killing by depriving them of sleep. So it involves an autosomal dominant mutation. So if a parent has the illness, their children will have a 50% chance of also having that illness later in life, which is a bigger jump than, say, if it were sporadic. So according to Max, the chance of having this disease in the general population is 1 in 30 million. Pretty rare.
Wow.
But in this family, it's 1 in 2. So when it's in the family, it's much more pervasive, much more prevalent, if you will. Now, the story behind this particular family follows historic records, but also the memories and experiences of those still living. They mentioned that for this family, this disease can be traced back a few centuries. The furthest possible case showed symptoms around 1764, long time ago. But let's discuss a case from 1943 because there were witnesses alive to still give an account about what that patient went through. So I'm going to give you just a few names here. Now, Pietro was the son of Giovanni, who was the son of Vincenzo, who was the son of Giuseppe, who was the son of some doctor that is about as far as the disease could be traced to. Okay. I won't go through everyone's stories because that could take ages. As interesting as it is, if you are as interested as me, I do recommend the book I've been talking about. Just know that Giuseppe had 8 children, 5 of which died before turning 1 year old. Unfortunately, this was common at that time.
Yeah.
His teenage son became ill with some mysterious illness and died. And then Giuseppe himself became ill and later died. Now, malaria was big in the area at this time, and guesses were made as to the illnesses and deaths. But familial fatal insomnia was just not understood at this point. Neither were prion diseases at all. So, also in the countryside of Italy at this time, cures for unknown illnesses would basically entail witchcraft or an exorcism, both of which were sought out for Giuseppe's son at that time, at different times.
Mhm.
Now, Vincenzo survived to adulthood, then married and had his own children, about 6 in all, 4 of which are believed to have died from familial fatal insomnia between the ages of mid-30s to mid-50s. Not so fun fact, Vincenzo was married to a woman named Mariana who had like this gorgeous red hair. But later she would be blamed for this curse of sorts because she had red hair. So superstition, I guess.
Oh, man.
So it was, in fact, her husband who was the carrier, however. Now, Giovanni had 12 children. Wow, it's a lot of kids. I say he had 12 children. His wife had children. You know what I mean?
Let's be specific.
I'm going with the carriers here because it's just easier to remember that Giovanni was a carrier, had 12 children, 8 of which lived to adulthood. From these 8, it is believed that 6 died from familial fatal insomnia, including Pietro. So now we're at Pietro. Pietro lived a life of politics. He saw the events of World War I, the rise of the fascist Mussolini era, and also World War II. So in 1944, along with the drama of the times, he came down with a fever. Now, familial fatal insomnia is different from other prion diseases in the fact that fever or varying temperatures, at least, are common with this one. You don't really see fever with other prion diseases, which makes it that was a problem trying to figure out what this was too, because people were like, if this is some sort of infection killing people, why is the body not responding like it would to a virus or a bacteria? Why are they not having fevers and inflammation and all this other stuff? Well, in this one, their fever is a thing, and you'll understand why once we get towards the end of this. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, he was quickly diagnosed with an ear infection, and that seemed to be that. Okay. It did not end there, however, and his fever returned along with this annoying bout of insomnia. He was not sleeping well, and it progressed to just not resting at all. His doctor diagnosed arteriosclerosis this time, but his condition worsened, and he traveled to a hospital. At this time, like when I say he traveled to a hospital, he would have had to go a little ways away, to get to a hospital,
Yeah.
especially living in the countryside. So He left after being told that they needed to observe him for a few days, though. Like, I guess he just thought, like, I ain't got time for this. So, but he did return soon after with worsening, like, weakness, confusion, and just this awful spasming of the legs. Now, the confusion worsened, and he began seeing things that were not there, like hallucinating. He would also have moments of clarity, though. So it was like this ever changing issue with him. The
It
doctors at the
sounds like
hospital,
dementia.
it does.
Mhm.
Um, and they would like hypothesize that at one point, but then when they would
Yeah.
like look at the brains, they would see no evidence of
Mhm.
of dementia so much.
Yeah.
So he, the doctors at the hospital diagnosed him with encephalitis, though typically a sign of such is a really bad headache, and he reported he had no headache. But maybe they thought like he's confused. Maybe he just doesn't feel it. I don't know. But
Mhm.
it's a bad headache when you have encephalitis. But so they sent him home after about a week. And I imagine anybody right now who's been to the doctor with symptoms and been diagnosed, misdiagnosed, and misdiagnosed, and misdiagnosed, and sent home and coming back and misdiagnosed is getting triggered over this.
Yeah.
But this whole family has had to go through this as well. So
Mhm.
um,
And you've had that
we,
experience.
I have, I have. It is frustrating, very frustrating. And then you still have to pay for those
Yes, you do.
visits.
They
In my
get paid for
opinion,
the
if you get it wrong, you get a refund. If they get it wrong, you get a
That's
refund.
right.
That's how it should be, in my opinion.
Oh, that's so
I am
good.
not
Yeah.
pleased with my with these services. You got it wrong. Why do you still get paid $200?
Mm.
So we actually have letters between his daughters about his condition, and one from his eldest daughter to the second eldest, who was like living abroad at this time, said, Papa is considerably worse than a month ago. He's lost his mind. He barely speaks, and when he does, he doesn't know what he's saying. When he sleeps, it's even worse. He makes these little movements because his nerves are never calm. He smokes, he turns on the lights, he throws off his covers. He rubs his hands and says he has pins and needles, all this while asleep.
Yeah.
And when he wakes up, he is more tired than ever. So, yeah. So the area at this time was also being bombed. There was a lot going on uh, at
It
this
may have
time
been
in this
tough to sleep
area.
anyway.
So yeah, but Pietro only worsened. His temperature was getting too high to read by thermometers. Like it was just going sky high. His body
Okay.
was jerking. His body was jerking uncontrollably. His eyes just became hollow. His tongue would swell.
Was he having
And he
seizures?
no, it's just his. He wasn't having seizures because it wasn't happening up here. He would be clear. He would have moments of clarity up here, even when that was going on. His body
Yeah.
was just. It's like his muscles would just constantly spasm, and it was yeah.
Yeah, I'm just thinking if the
Like
temperature's
it
going that
looked.
high, yeah. If the temperature's going that high, like eventually you're like you push your brain into a seizure if the temperature goes high enough.
Yeah, but there's parts of the brain that are there's. I mean, it'll make sense once I get to the end. But
Okay.
I'm not saying he didn't have any seizures, but there would be times where this would be going on while he was fully aware, like and cognizant and everything else.
Yeah.
So he died in June of 1944, just shy of 50 years old. So
Yeah.
Pietro's siblings died of the same illness, a sister in 1948, another in 1957, another in 1965, and another in 1966.
Mhm.
So about 30 years later, and as Italy was progressing to more modern amenities like sinks and fancy tiles and cars and, all this stuff, Pietro's daughter, I think it's Assunta, Assunta, Assunta.
Yeah.
Um, she was at this point, she's 48 years old. She was living with her brother Silvano and
Yes,
knitting,
Silvano.
yeah, knitting for a local factory. She was actually traveling and suddenly felt this shocking jolt just go through her body. So it was so much that she had to like grip the side of like a wall or something. And she became dizzy right after.
Yeah.
But she figured like, it's August, it's hot. Maybe it's the heat. But a similar occurrence happened the following weeks. After visiting a doctor, she was actually diagnosed with Meniere's disease, which is this inner ear issue that can cause vertigo. Um, but she only got worse. She could not walk straight. Noises began to really bother her. She could no longer sleep well. She would just lay down and close her eyes, but never actually rested. She began suffering fevers and sweating, and the signs of her illness showed even on her face, with dark circles under her eyes, this stiff, set mouth. So, yeah. But the sleeplessness became worse, and she began feeling these shocks again throughout her body, like just these
Mhm.
painful jolts, I guess.
Mhm.
So she went to stay with her mother, and she would be in bed, thrashing, murmuring. She finally went to a hospital some miles away where they tried to give her Valium, but it only made her agitated instead of doing what it would normally do. And now some
Yeah, I
people
can't
have,
imagine. Yeah, I can't imagine what someone's brain chemistry is when these symptoms are like full blown. Like, I'm not surprised the Valium just did the wrong thing.
well, and some people have sensitivities to meds too, where like they end up
Mhm.
like having the opposite effect
Yeah,
too. But in this case, this is pretty common with this illness.
and I actually found a reference to um, DT Max right here.
Hmm.
This is a CNN article. They contacted DT Max, and they interviewed some members of this family. Said Max said you'd have 14 kids in a generation. 6 or 7 of them would die from the disease. Said DT Max, a writer for the New Yorker and an author of the book The Family That Couldn't Sleep. Um,
Yeah. So the sweating and tremors got worse. The hospital gave one wrong diagnosis after another. No one knew what a prion was, much less a prion disease. So after about 3 weeks of this, they diagnosed her with psychoneurotic depression and anxiety and sent her home. So
Ugh.
there she worsened. She stopped eating. She grew confused, like Pietro had, often getting up and saying she needed to go somewhere or be somewhere. Her family took her to another hospital where they tried relentlessly to diagnose her with alcoholism. They're like, she must be drinking. Does she drink? And the family was like, no, she doesn't drink.
This
But
is
like it
Italy.
looks
Everybody drinks.
well. I mean, but like she wasn't drinking. She wasn't an alcoholic. They were trying to like they kept saying, well,
Yeah,
this is alcoholism. This is alcoholism. This is
come
or
on.
DTS
That's
or
not fair, dude.
um.
In
But
Italy, you have
they were not.
wine with breakfast.
Well, I don't know about then though. I don't know if it's the same as today. I don't know. Then again, I've never been to Italy, so I don't know.
I have it.
So but yeah, they kept telling them that she didn't drink. Now she had to be tied down some nights at the hospital. They did CAT scans, PET scans several times,
Yeah.
seeing nothing of note. Then they used this dye in her veins to search for a tumor. She had an allergic reaction to that, nearly
Oh
died of that.
no.
She did recover from that, but she was bedbound, and even with the other symptoms, she was aware of who and where she was. She had all these other symptoms like the spasms and stuff like that, but she could answer to her name and things like that. Anyway, she died there in December of 1973. An autopsy was done on her body. Her liver was great, no signs of alcoholism. So,
Huh.
vindicated there. The only issue to be seen was the adrenal glands. They looked as though they had just completely burned out and just atrophied. Like her body was responding to all this great stress. Um,
Wow.
and the adrenal glands
That's
release
fascinating.
adrenaline and cortisol. So, your stress
Yeah.
hormones, things like that.
Was her I have to ask, was her uterus in her neck? Was that the problem?
No, it was not.
Yeah.
They opened her
Shucks. I
skull.
thought I was close.
No, they did open her skull to find her brain showed no signs of Alzheimer's or dementia or damage that they could see. So, I mean, they were just like, whatever. Um, so, more family members died after similar symptoms, including another of Pietro's daughters who began to suffer in her 50s. The first sign being holding her head in an awkward way, kind of like the sheep were doing with
Yeah.
Scrapie. followed by the sweating, fever, agitation, and death. Then the brother, Silvano, suffered the same fate. Now,
Yeah.
towards the end of Silvano's life, however, his nephew in law, who was a doctor, asked for a half hour's worth of EEG findings. Like at the time, they were just doing like snapshots, here and there. And
Yeah.
at this point, he was like, give me a good 30 minutes worth of what's going on. Cause maybe there's something we're missing. But there it was found that the brain waves went just up and down rapidly, sharply. It wasn't normal. It wasn't signaling of sleep or being awake. It was like he was in a constant state in between. Um, so he was actually finally taken to see Elio Lugaresi, who was this pioneer in sleep medicine back in the 1960s when it was like still very
Yeah.
new. Sleep
Mhm.
wasn't really studied until there were ideas about like sleep back in like Roman times and how like we've always known sleep is important and like you can't live without sleep, that it does something to reset you, that but like the thing at the time too was if you don't sleep for a while, your body will eventually make you sleep and catch up and bring you back to like homeostasis, if you will. In this
Mhm.
case, with this illness, it doesn't do that. You do not reach a point where you will sleep.
Oh,
So,
and you know me, when I lay down in the bed at night, as soon as I get still and quiet and warm, I'm gone.
mm-hmm.
You
Yeah, you
will
go to
be
your
up for
meeting with
another.
death. I don't know what y'all do. I
I,
guess y'all play cards. I don't know.
I sleep, and I very much enjoy that thing about me. You will be up for another 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
You'll finally fall asleep, and then you'll wake up at 3 in the morning, kind of like clockwork, and for no reason. And then when it is time to get up, your body wants to go back to deep sleep. And you do
Mm-hmm.
your best sleeping in like the mid morning
I do.
when you are normally responsible for something else.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Especially as a
So,
parent. So
yeah. All that to say, you hate this about me.
it's very annoying. Though
Yes,
I would
but
never, I, I would never wish this on any worst enemy. To be honest,
uh
this is this is
I,
this is awful.
yeah, the idea of just literally not being able to fall asleep. I cannot think of a worse situation.
Yeah. So he was kept under watch at the Neurological Institute at Bologna, Italy. Uh, I mean,
It's
and I mean
pronounced
that
Bologna.
it is not.
I'm just kidding.
You're pronounced Bologna. Uh, I mean, and I mean that quite literally, not you being Bologna, but they were
Oh,
keeping watch
I
of
do need
him
to mention.
quite
Yeah, I
literally.
do need to mention. I do need to mention that in America we pronounce it baloney, but it's
Is that
spelled the
how we
same
spell
way as.
it?
Yes,
We spell bologna like that?
I think on the
I've never had to spell
packaging it
bologna
is.
because I don't like bologna.
Right. I got to
So
look it up. I got to know.
look it up. We're freaking weird.
Very much.
Anyway, so he was kept there, and he was watched with EEG sensors on his head. They had him. They were watching his sleep sessions with like they were taping them and watching them, that kind of thing. Did you find it?
I did. Let me
Is
show
it?
you. Let me see. Yeah, I'll show you.
I
It's
don't
so
like
absurd.
bologna, so I don't like go looking. I don't go
Americans.
looking for it, so I don't
I'm
know.
adding. I'm adding my own character voice to the Google AI. Americans generally spell Bologna, but pronounce it baloney.
Well, that's baloney.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, you'll be interested to know it evolved from the pronunciation of Bologna and is used as a slang term for something false or nonsensical. Hope this helps.
what'd that city do? My God. I'm just kidding.
I don't know.
Anyway,
I don't know.
sounds like us. So his Silvano's symptoms worsened, and he knew that they would. He knew like he had seen so many other family members die from this illness.
Yeah.
So you could imagine like this just sort of imminent doom
Hmm.
kind of building within him anyway.
Hmm.
But yeah, so his last nights were described as laying in twitching, exhausted nothingness. He died a little over 3 months after first arriving at this institute. His brain was removed for study and sent to a former student of Lugaresi's, Pierluigi Gambetti, who was running a neuropathology lab in Cleveland at the time here in America. And it's good that they were able to get his brain and stuff.
Yes.
This particular family, and also like other families, I think in Italy at the time, and probably even now too, like culturally speaking, are not into the whole like removal of body parts, I guess, or I don't know, like there's a certain shame about talking about your illness, or there's just like
Oh,
socially
okay.
speaking, it's just not a thing
Okay.
that they like to
Yeah,
do.
yeah. Right. It was
Um,
very brave of him to do what he did because he was the first. Like his at that generation was aware of their family history, but
mhm.
it's very fortunate that they were able to study his brain because it held a lot of answers.
Yeah. Now, Lugaresi, the guy at the institute, the neurologic,
Mhm.
that institute, he actually paid out of his own pocket to have it removed and sent there. It was like
Wow.
that, or it wasn't going to happen.
Mhm.
So, and he advised Gambetti to search the hypothalamus and brainstem, as recent studies had found that those areas are responsible for sleep, right? Those are some areas responsible for sleep. He did so, and all of the tissue looked healthy until he noticed these astrocytes, which are these star shaped clusters. And he noticed gaps in the thalamus as well. So, like 90% of the thalamus had been like destroyed by whatever this was.
Yes. Yeah.
And the thalamus at this time was still being studied, but we do know now that it's responsible for regulation of temperature,
Hmm. A lot of
hormones,
stuff.
and sweating. Yeah, so it provided a basically technically it provided a shut off for these responses, these body responses. And with it eaten away, there was no more off button. So the temps would rise
Yeah.
abnormally, just go all over the place. The victim
Yeah.
would sweat profusely. Um,
Mhm.
Anything regarding hormones just off the charts,
Yeah.
which makes sense for like the adrenal glands being burned out as well.
Uh-huh.
The thalamus is also kind of known for regulation of emotions, sleep wake cycles. Now, this wasn't something that had been seen before, and Lucaresi and Gambetti gave it the name familial hypersomnolence before changing it to familial fatal insomnia. They published their findings in 1986, literally a year after I was born, so it really wasn't that long ago. It wasn't that long ago.
He's like,
I'm only 40. Okay.
okay.
So
Yeah, I wasn't ready for that. You caught me off guard.
now this was progress for sure, but no one still understood why the thalamus had been eaten away. As I said earlier, the rest of the tissue looked healthy. There was no viral or bacterial infection. There wasn't even inflammation. Okay. And just because you give something a name, because like, okay, this is new, we kind of see where this is taking place. We'll give it a name, but we don't know why this is happening. Like that's where like, okay, you
Yeah.
have a name for it. Now let's figure out how and why.
Mhm.
Now,
Yep.
Lisi, who was a niece of Silvano's, and her husband Ignazio, which is pretty cool name, like
Ignacio.
that. Uh, he was the nephew-in-law that was also the doctor that convinced him to go to Bologna to see Lugaresi.
Yeah.
They started putting these family pieces together by sorting this family tree because they knew that other people in their family had died of this sort of mysterious illness. Um, so she actually, Lisi called extended family to ask about possible deaths of a mysterious nature. Again, kind of a social taboo, I guess.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, like talking about personal or family stuff when it came to illness was just taboo at the time. Now, this
Yeah.
family disease, or I think it had also been called a curse by some, um, had been seen as shameful to earlier generations, right? Especially when it came to
Yeah.
like, okay, like marriage was a big deal, right? Nobody would want to marry someone who had this cursed lineage or
Sure.
whatever.
Yes. Yes.
So, yeah.
And I'm immediately wondering, because we're talking about Italy, which is a deeply Catholic, deeply religious part of the world. Is it a shameful thing because people are associating illness with some sort of demonic oppression or possession or what have you? I would wonder
I
if
mean, yeah,
that's
they
at
could.
play. Hmm.
Yeah, very possible. Or maybe they think they have sin in their life. I don't know.
Exactly. It's punishment from God.
Yeah. So records were found and they were able to connect deaths that were misdiagnosed, like as everything from encephalitis to depression to schizophrenia to actually being familial fatal insomnia based on the symptoms that were described. They also found records of branches of the family Lisi didn't even know about, and they saw similar symptoms and misdiagnoses there: pellagra, meningitis, schizophrenia, exhaustion from stress or shock. Um, these two they were able to connect to familial fatal insomnia. So much of the living family despised this search through, their family tree and this new diagnosis. Like I said, it was either considered taboo or maybe they just didn't want to know about it because they were scared, it was causing anxiety. Like, no, I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but a 36-year-old cousin uh, also fell ill with the beginnings of the illness, and which is really sad. She's 36. She has two children. She
Yeah.
was taken to Lugaresi as Silvano had been, and she died after these familiar symptoms. And then very soon after, another cousin also died from these symptoms.
Yeah.
So these two brains were also sent to Gambetti, and as Lugaresi was studying the EEGs, they were trying to work together to figure out what was going on. So
Mhm.
there was a difference in these two cases in that they seemed to suffer a slower acting version of familial fatal insomnia, which
Huh.
is good when it comes to research, and I'll tell you why in a second. But the same symptoms were there, but because of how long they suffered with them, which sucks as well, there was more evidence of the disease on the brain because over time more would show, right?
Yeah.
So Lugaresi noticed spikes in the EEGs similar to those found with CJD, which Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, which was a recently described and identified prion disease, right? So more is
Yeah.
being understood about
Totally.
prion diseases. They may
Uh-huh.
not all the scientific community and medical community was calling them that at the time because there was some skepticism on whether it was a protein type deal. And we're
Uh-huh.
going to talk about CJD, Creutzfeldt-Jakob, next week as well. Gambetti found spongy areas throughout the brains that looked a lot like CJD as well to him. So they were like, hey, we're noticing this big similarity. And Gambetti just so happened to know the man that we discussed much earlier, who first described the cause for illnesses like this and who had coined the term prion, Stanley Prusiner. So, he just happened to have a connection with him, which is fortunate. Now, Prusiner had developed antibodies at this point that could be used to test for what he had now termed prion disease. So he sent some over to Gambetti. And sure enough, the tissues of the last two Italian family deaths were full of infectious prions, according to these tests,
Wow.
uh,
Okay.
as were those belonging to prior sufferers. So that kind of nailed, almost said a terrible thing that would have been not, no pun intended. I was going to say that put the nail in the coffin. Don't, no.
Blech.
So that was, that, this is why I should not use idioms.
Okay.
That hit the nail on the head. Okay.
you
So
can you can lead you can lead a horse to the bush, but you can't make him eat the two birds and the one on his tail.
anyway, familial fatal insomnia was indeed an inherited prion disease. So even today, much of that family refuses to accept such things. I mean, obviously, Lisi and Ignazio, they're trying to figure this out. They're accepting of it because they want to, maybe if we know what it is, we can have a better idea of searching for a cure,
Yeah. Yeah.
that kind of thing. Some still believe it's this family curse, or some actually don't want genetic testing done because now there's genetic testing to see if you carry this
Yes.
particular genetic defect, but they don't want to do it because they think it'll that the stress of the test will bring the illness on, right? Like they think if I'm stressed out, that's what brings about the illness. So if I get the test and then I'll get the illness because I'm stressed about the test. It's just a
Yeah, that's just a
sort
stigma.
of,
That's not.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's
that's
like
not
a
based on any sort of
superstition,
clinical fact. Yeah,
right. But it's how
yeah.
they think, because at one point there was I think one of the misdiagnoses for someone was stress brought about by shock or fear or something like that. So that, from then on it was like, oh,
No.
this causes it. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's how it worked. So you've heard me describe the experiences of those who have suffered from it. But I want to give you a clear understanding of the symptoms as we now understand them. There are 4 stages, essentially. Stage one
Okay.
involves The first stage involves worsening insomnia, panic attacks, paranoia, anxiety. Now, this stage usually lasts about 4 months. The pupils may constrict, the neck may become stiff, leaving the head difficult to hold upright sometimes. Stage 2 lasts about 5 months and involves more noticeable panic, anxiety, and at this point, hallucinations. Blood pressure, temperature, and heart rate are often elevated between these stages as well. There may be a sort of stuck between awake and asleep sort of symptom as well, when in which there's like strange dreams, hallucinations, and just involuntary motor movements. Yeah, sorry. Stage 3 involves a complete inability to sleep and just rapid weight loss. So like
Yeah.
now you don't even have the twilight sort of thing going on. You just, yeah. This can last about 3 months. Finally, stage 4 shows up as what looks like dementia. So whether it's like uh, involving worsening agitation, spasms, hallucinations, confusion, all of that. This can last up to 6 months before the patient dies. So it's this sort of slow, agonizing, awful illness. Now, death typically occurs within 6 to 36 months after symptoms show up.
Yeah.
The age of onset can be between 13 and 60 years old, averaging around middle age, so around the 50s typically. There is no cure, and the treatment is usually palliative or hospice care, as it is always fatal so far. There are studies being done on medications and treatments showing some promise of slowing progression of the disease, at least in animal models, but we don't, that's all we have. And I mentioned this one family, however, there are 40 known families at least that carry the familial fatal insomnia gene around the world. So there's other families like this. This includes 8 German families, 5 Italian families, 4 American families, 2 French families, 2 Australian families, 2 British families, 1 Japanese family, 1 Austrian family, among others. So just some examples. Like it doesn't have to be
Yeah.
in one area. Now, there have been 37 cases of documented sporadic fatal insomnia as of 2022. I know that's not many, but the fact that it can happen is terrifying. The sporadic form involves a different gene, but the mutation ends up producing the same issue, the misshapen prion that causes the disease. Again, spontaneous, meaning there is no familial tie. So it just happens. Now, there may be some different symptoms in these cases, such as double vision, cognitive impairment, and a lack of coordination early on. I feel like that's not all that different. Maybe the double vision is an addition. Either way, it follows the same stages, ending in death. There is, I was waiting up for you the other night, actually, while I was doing some research on this. And I was reading the book, right? And after I finished some of this research, I was like, okay, it's like midnight. I'm going to have to make this 2 parts. There's just no way I'm going to get the other sections done and be able to do them within the time frame that we have. And I know you were out seeing a movie with your brother-in-law and all that. So it was late, and I just was like, I'm going to doom scroll, go on TikTok for a minute and just sort of clear my head. Well, I saw at least 2 TikTok videos related to familial fatal insomnia, right? And my
Yeah.
mind started going crazy. It was like, I don't feel very sleepy right now.
Oh my God.
Do I
Okay.
have
Here we go.
do
Here
I have
comes the
sporadic
spiral.
fatal insomnia? And one of
There
the
it is.
one of the videos though was by Ray Johnson. Do you know him? He does the until like those
Yes.
stories. Yeah. Well, one of them was by him, and you can probably look this guy up too. He talked about a YouTuber um, who his name is Ricard Siagian. It's Siagian, and his videos are actually still there. He had, I think it was spontaneous fatal insomnia, and like he documented on video, like there were like it shows him in bed, he can't sleep, he's begging for help if anybody knows what's wrong with him.
Oh my
It's
God.
it's sad, it's disturbing,
Yeah.
but
Mm.
the videos are still there. Like if you have a
If you dare.
morbid interest in this,
Mm.
but yeah, he passed away, but his videos are still there. And it's a pretty horrible illness. But yeah,
I'm wondering who uploaded his videos. Maybe he was still
I mean
functional
he
enough to.
yeah, you're still you're still able to do things. You know what's happening. You're aware. You're being so he couldn't sleep. His body when you can't sleep, your body just starts breaking down. Your
Mhm.
tissues, your organs start breaking down.
Yeah.
Your immune system is just ineffective. The spasming is probably because like your muscles, nerves, all those tissues are just they're breaking down, but it's just their way of dealing with the lack of actual rest and the actual reset that is involved with sleep. So yeah, going without sleep can and will kill you.
Mhm.
But for most of us, it just resets itself unless you're like keeping yourself up with uppers, and like that's don't
Yeah.
do that anyway. But
Don't do that.
yeah, it's don't do that. I mean, usually you're gonna wear your heart out anyway doing that with the medications that you're trying to use to do that, or the drugs you're trying to use
Yeah.
to do that. But yeah, going without sleep will kill you, and that's what it has done. So the next time I do want to go into CJD, or you may know it as mad cow disease, Kuru, and a few others, and it's going to be
Mhm.
another wild ride. So
All right. All right, folks, that's going to do it for today's episode. Thank you all so much for listening and watching, and we will see you in the next one. Bye bye.